Hey, this is Jay Kapoor.
Hey, this is Tim Katt.
Welcome to The Game Plan.
Great episode with Pat Connington. Let's get right into our partner rundown. 8 minutes on the clock, 4 topics. Where do you want to start?
I want to start where we started with Pat, which is his decision to choose basketball over baseball. What did you think of that?
Well, I love this. First of all, as a former athlete myself, high school and college, Division III college basketball, I just love the idea of like having that choice. And obviously he earned it. And, anyone who followed Pat or looks back at his career and looked at his high school performance and then college performance would have said, no question, he was going to the Major League Baseball. I mean, he was drafted in the 4th round. He was playing Class A ball. He could throw in the 90s. So he was set up perfectly for that. But the way he thought about it was a way I had never thought about it before. And that's, the baseball opportunities is always going to be there. But basketball, not necessarily the case. Like, you got to be a young guy. You got to get built in. And I also think the window of time was unique because he did this before what's now happening, which is most guys in his situation would get sent to the G League for a year. So He was right in that timing too, because he could skip on the development phase.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing to sort of take from here is like we talk about the idea of the athlete as a complete person, the person you are on the field or on the court as the person you are off the court. And the kind of foresight that Pat showed even as a young kid, and obviously having his group of folks around him that allowed him to see those two decisions and choose the one that made sense in the moment is kind of reflective of how he is today. And I know we harp on this a little bit. We're like, oh, the way you are as a player is the way you are when you retire. But at the end of the day, the person is the same. And so for Pat, being somebody who's forward thinking, being somebody who has that foresight, who trusts the advice of the folks around him, allowing him to choose a decision to play today, even if he's coming off the bench, to have that career. And then, I think I heard him say like, yeah, if he had to go out and pitch today, he could probably pitch somewhere in the high 80s, low 90s. So clearly he's made the right decision for him in this moment, even at this very young age.
All right, next topic. We talk about this a lot on the game plan, starting to build something as an active athlete versus as a retired athlete.
I love the idea of, we talked about long-term thinking, the way that Pat is thinking about learning today and starting. He came in and he said, look, for me, obviously having exposure to real estate from his dad, understanding some of the stuff, having, even his first contract, going out and getting a rental property in Portland and like doing well on one of them, making $75K, going bust on the other ones. The learnings that he had today, I think, is such an important thing because, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but like taking ownership of your money is so important. But for him right now, it's about learning and it's about setting the foundations that he's going to need to one day when he retires, go be a full-time real estate manager or developer. So I love that piece of it.
Yeah. And hitting on the topic we were talking about with baseball versus basketball, it's like he also created this other option too. So if basketball wasn't going to work out, he also had baseball, but he also was building his nest egg or starting to plant the seed for the real estate opportunity, which I just love. I also love about it the local aspect. So we had asked the question, hey, if you were in Brooklyn or LA or whatever, would it look differently? And it's impossible to answer that question because that's just not the situation he was put in. But he's made the most of these opportunities in these markets, Portland, Milwaukee. He's building slowly. I mean, I think there's so much trust that can be earned in the fact that he was just flipping houses at first. And based on his, where his first contract was at, that's what he could afford to do, right? He wasn't trying to do something greater than what he could afford to do. And I think with that, creates the opportunity to build a lot of trust and get other investors activated and want to be part of what he's doing.
So let's talk about this idea of trust, Tim, because we have covered this a lot with athletes taking ownership of their money and not just being sort of passive checks in. What are your thoughts there?
We've gotten to a place now where the narrative around the broke athlete is mainstream. Yes, we talk about the 30 for 30 broke all the time. I think that's definitely part of it. But as a result, guys are being really responsible with their money, but they're also making more money than ever before, especially NBA guys with max contracts and how media rights deals have led to that, led to a higher cap. And so we're in this unique place in time where guys are being more conservative. They're listening to money managers are putting, keeping a really diverse portfolio, but there's an itch to do more. There's an itch to take on some risk or do something direct. And I love the fact that even though a money manager might not be recommending real estate because they don't take a fee on that, guys like Pat are starting to do things differently, doing things the way that they believe can win.
Well, and they understand the idea of passive income, right? So the way Pat broke it down, and I loved it, where he said, look, start putting money into it while you're still getting active income from your first career as a player. So, you got to pay down a mortgage, you got to pay property taxes. At the end of the day, you're maybe taking home $2,000 a month. Okay, that's not going to break the bank when you're making, good money in your day job. But look at a 10 or 15-year mortgage. You pay down that mortgage. Suddenly, all you got to do is pay property taxes, and you're now pulling in $8,000, $9,000 a month. Well, that's significant if you've got a couple of different properties, generating that for you when you're 30, 32, 35, and you're no longer making those consistent game checks, or, God forbid you get hurt, you have to call upon some of that income in a sale or whatever it is. So that kind of foresight, again, comes back to the fact that that passive income being built today is so powerful.
It's an exciting time right now. The players are down in Orlando. They're in the bubble. What do we think is going on down there? What an opportunity to create content, maybe make deals. What do you think?
Yeah, the making deals part is really interesting, right? So for somebody like Pat, you asked him hey, are you printing business cards to go down there? And he said, hey, guys have reached out to me and said, when we get down to Orlando, I want to hear you talk about it. And, hopefully our conversation with him today can serve as a primer for some of these guys who don't understand the terms, want to get involved in it. I love that for Pat, this is his ability to have a track record and have skin in the game. He can show guys that I've done this with my own money. I believe in the stuff that I'm trying to serve you, right? Never trust a chef that doesn't eat his own cooking. Pat is in here saying, I believe in this. I believe this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my career. And if you want on board with me, I've got the playbook. I've got the game plan to make it happen. So love the fact that he's got real skin in the game in this.
Yeah, and we've seen the amazing things that the max contract superstars like LeBron and KD have been able to do with their money, whether it's community impact, things around education, things in media, even venture investing, a lot of the stuff that we get excited to talk to our guests about on the game plan. But what I think is one of the biggest opportunities is for players, maybe not of the superstar status, but players to come together around other things that aren't, what we know, which is like media, but something like real estate. And so I'm really excited to see, we're not going to know on the day after the NBA title, okay, what deals were formed or what's happening. But I do think we're going to look back at this time, 4 or 5 years from now, 10 years from now and start hearing the stories about how guys, made connections with each other in the bubble. And it led to some huge deals, some huge opportunities, some household brands. It's going to be really cool and exciting to see.
Yeah, I love it, Tim. I'm excited for Pat and the rest of the NBA guys to get back on the court. And I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Partner Rundown.
Thanks, Jay. Always a pleasure.